For 34 years, the primary heavy attack helicopter of the Indian Air Force has been a Soviet-designed chopper called the Mi-35. Now, finally, the IAF has some new helicopters, the US-built Apache, which gives the IAF a massive boost in its firepower. Prayers to the new Apache, which the Indian Air Force hopes to take to battle. This is widely regarded the most formidable attack chopper in the world. The Apache, which has fought several wars in the Gulf, is now a part of the Indian Air Force after Boeing handed over 8 of the helicopters today ordered as part of a $1.1 billion deal in 2015. The Indian Air Force gets the last of its 22 Apaches by March 2020, and the Indian Army, which wants its own fleet of attack helicopters, is set to receive 6. The helicopter it's replacing, the Mi-25 and Mi-35, first entered service with the Indian Air Force 34 years ago, way back in 1983.
Apache attack helicopter is being purchased to replace the aging Mi-35. Apache helicopter is an advanced multi-mission helicopter that is being operated worldwide. The IAF has upgraded its inventory to the latest generation of attack helicopters. The Apaches will enhance the operational capability of the Indian Air Force.
Though the Indian Army and Air Force have inducted other attack helicopters over the last few years, none are as capable as the Apache. A flight of Apaches going in for a mission shared targeting data. Data on the targets which have been selected is handed over to individual helicopters, which can then destroy tanks, fortifications or structures at long ranges using missiles and rockets. Enemy soldiers and soft targets can be engaged with a cannon. The Air Force says the Apaches will be an integral part of Indian tank formations, which will make thrusts across the international border in the event of war with Pakistan. The Apaches will take out enemy tanks while defending the Indian formation day or night and in all weather conditions. With Ghazali, Vishnu Shom for NDTV. Well, joining us now, a very special guest, one of the finest helicopter pilots in the Indian Air Force in the not-too-distant past, the former Air Chief Marshal Fali Homi Major. It's always wonderful to speak to you, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. Air Chief Marshal, it was 1983 when the first variants of the Mi-25 helicopter joined service. That's what is now being replaced, that and the Mi-35, which was a variant of what we inducted in 1983. How much of a jump is the Apache in terms of capability?
Good evening, Vishnu. The jump is actually phenomenal. Like the nuclear triad, which every nuclear power aims for, I think today the Indian Air Force has got a very capable and a very potent triad of helicopters, transports and fighters. And to join the Indian Air Force fleet of helicopters today is the Apache. Now, as you very correctly mentioned some time back, this is perhaps the most potent helicopter platform in the world today. And if we go back to 1983 and the years thereon, with the Mi-25s and the Mi-35s, actually they were classified as gunships and not the true attack helicopter as the Apache is. With the induction of the Apache, especially in the kind of security environment which obtains today in our immediate neighborhood, and indeed in the extended neighborhood, I would say that the utility of this helicopter, the exploitation of the Apache in subconventional conflict situations, as well as hybrid warfare situations, but of course its capability even in a hot war situation cannot be compared with any other helicopter in the world.
Sure. Air Chief, let me ask you this.
If you see the history...
Sir,
yeah.
Let me ask you this, sir. Now, This helicopter can be used for several roles, as you mentioned. I was just reading today, it can actually be used in its longbow variant for maritime strike operations as well. Be that as it may, the Indian Army is getting about 6 of these choppers for itself, and there's been this huge argument, which I know you're all too aware of, on who should be flying these attack choppers, the Indian Air Force or the Indian Army. The Indian Army says, we have our tank formations, they cross the border potentially, we want our own integral air. How does the Indian Air Force counter that argument? And what is your thought on this as we try and integrate our Air Force, Navy and Army?
Vishnu, this was, you're talking of many years back. From then onwards, a lot of changes have taken place, a lot of wisdom has dawned on the jointmanship and the utility of your weapon systems. To me personally, the ownership is not very relevant. What is relevant is the exposure, the experience, and the wherewithal in which a young officer, whether he be from the Army, Navy or the Air Force, has grown all his life. And every capability must have a mother organization. And for the exploitation of this helicopter, initially, and as very correctly decided by the government, the Indian Air Force is going to exploit this helicopter before it goes on to the Army.
Yep.
And in the future, I'm quite sure that with good joint planning, with good coordination of the training and the operational employment of this helicopter, all forces, whether it be Air Force, Army or Navy, with these kind of weapon systems will always fight together, and I see it happening in the very near future.
Air Chief Marshal Major, thank you very much for joining us, giving us your perspective on the acquisition of this very, very potent attack platform, something that's going to transform not just the Air Force, but also the functioning of the Army in the areas where this helicopter is deployed. Thanks very much indeed.